All right, so I went to go see The Backrooms in theaters. It was heavily packed, I'm gonna be completely honest. Like, we barely got in. Overall, I think it was a fun movie to watch. We followed two characters mainly, Clark and Dr. Clark and Dr. Mary Klein. The characters themselves, and the story felt very unfinished. Well, I'll say I'll say Mary felt unfinished. Um Clark, I think he played his part, and I think he did his part in the story well. I think we have more to explore with Mary's side, and maybe we will get more with Clark. Honestly, I hope we get more to the story than just this movie because it was really good other than feeling unfinished. Like there could be more, like we're going to know more. This felt like a movie with no real payoff, even though I feel there's going to be one later. It was sort of this holding your breath horror where you felt like something was going to happen and it never really did. But it was good. With the sound and set design, everything felt eerie, which I really liked. There was a bit of, I won't say gore, it wasn't really gory. Um, but Clark basically ate the stomach of this inanimate human thing. It was like tofu. It was really weird. And then after that, he proceeded to scalp this other human creature being. Clark, I realize, is someone who hasn't realized his dreams. Um, he's trying to support him and another person, and I'm not gonna blame anything on anyone else because he has put himself in this position. He has put himself in the position of caretaker, and now it has deeply affected him to where he no longer sees himself as an architect. He's working as a failing business store owner who is being outdone by his competitor. He's kicked out of the house by his wife because he was drinking and yelling, and now he is sleeping in the store. And now the store is having issues where the bills are running high and he can't figure out why. He's laying there in the day, and his TV, or not the day, he's laying there at the night, and his TV suddenly becomes broken, and he's seeing himself in this weird room. He has him check it out. He discovers the back rooms, and I would say he kind of has an epiphany, but in a bad way. He realizes this is something he can explore, but also exploit to his advantage. And he realizes that, or he not realizes, he begins to feel that the real world doesn't understand him, but this place does. Because he brings it to his therapist, and she thinks he's crazy. And his therapist is obviously Dr. Mary Klein, who is the other character. Um, we sort of get these flashbacks and dreams and feelings from her, and it feels like there's something always awry with how she's interacting with the background, with how she's interacting with the backrooms, or that she has always been interacting with the backrooms. That even her mother, in some way, was interacting with the backrooms, but we don't really know how, or if that's going to come into play ever, or if that's something that just they were trying to allude to in this movie. Another thing I would like to comment on is I really like the camera shots in this movie. How they would switch between the sort of first person perspective like in Exit 8. I really like that. And then um this old real found footage feeling. It felt like these two characters were very much moving through the movie, but they weren't interacting with it. There was no story release. There was no real story coming into play. The movie felt sort of unfinished, which is why I'm hoping that we get more later. One thing I would sort of like to leave off on is something this movie reminded me of, and it's something my government teacher told me. And it's that kindness is not always nice. Sometimes it's truthful and it hurts, and it's something you need to do because it will be for the betterment of the person. Um, and there's one scene like it that sticks out. It's, I guess it's like the biggest scene, not the biggest scene, but the sort of I don't know how to describe it. But they're sitting at the table, and Clark is having them repeat an earlier scene where Klein was having them reenact the argument that had occurred between Clark and his wife. And Klein stops, and she becomes, instead of feeding into what Clark was believing, she was honest with him, and she told him that he could stay, that that's not like that's not how life had to be, but what he was doing was wrong. And you could see how it had touched Clark. You could see how the anger had left, and he was going to let her go until obviously the pirate Clark, took a big out of him. That's another thing. I do think it's interesting what they touched on, that the Backrooms is like a grouping of memories of people, but it's remembering incorrectly. But I hope they touch on this idea of memories more within the Backrooms, and how those memories become maybe more traumatic, or even more buried, or I guess how memories become buried and changed as they get piled on top of more and more memories. Anyway, uh overall I think it was a good watch. I wouldn't give it like I wouldn't give it a 90. I'd probably give it like 75 to 80, like an 8. So I guess overall fun watch. I recommend it. I hope they do more with it. And that is all. Peace out and bye.